Chapter 101, A Place of Extreme Wood. The group followed carefully behind the old forest troll priest towards recessed terrain, finally stopping beside a river after a half-day's time and passing through a broken section of mountain rock. There was a river in the back and primitive houses made of wood all around there. There were also a few simple traps set up and several weird towering trees. When they arrived, the original demon that had been keeping an eye on the dwarves had to come back due to the distance between Han Shao and the dwarves becoming too large. It circled this area and started surveying the various corners. Leveraging the increased field of vision with the three original demons, Han Shao discovered that this was an extremely large area. He made a rough calculation that there were several hundred huts here. It looked like this was the hideout of the forest trolls. Many green-skinned forest trolls clutched weapons in their hands, whether they were children or females, and were being trained by a strong forest troll warrior. From the elf's description earlier, Han Shao understood that the forest trolls were born with a natural inclination for raiding and looting. There was no such thing as self-providing and self-sufficiency in their lives. Whether food, drink, or items of use, they all naturally thought that these items should be earned through stealing. They who worship the demon of raiding Dadra also treated children and women as a training target, as this would increase their strength during raids. When the old priest arrived, he used the language of the forest trolls to call something out loudly. All the forest trolls in the tribe, whether children, the elderly, or females, excitedly ripped off the pockets on their body and waved them in the air, calling out Dadra Dadra. After continuing in this fashion for a while, the old priest finally continued conversing with Han Shao in the language of the humans. Come, I will take the great Dadra and his liaison to the sacred grounds. Hurry up. The great Dadra is impatient, Han Shao said with a darkened face. The forest trolls continued carrying the little skeleton and Han Shao continued on foot. Several troll warriors pushed in several wooden rafts from afar. Han Shao and the little skeleton walked towards the wooden rafts when indicated by the old priest. Afterwards, some of the forest trolls paddled their wooden oars and set out for the river current. The wooden rafts advanced slowly, docking at a patch of swampy earth. After roughly half an hour, Han Shao followed the old priest up the shore and discovered that all the trees here were towering and extremely large. The vibrant growth of the grass and shrubbery was enough to drown a person, and even the weeds here grew with great vigor. The plants and trees on all sides seemed to be growing quite well, and a bizarre presence seemed to permeate the air. Pushing past the thick shrubbery, several troll warriors led the way. The old priest pointed out the road and Han Shao followed behind him, heading for an even deeper part of the area. As he made his way deeper, a feeling grew within Han Shao that something was amiss, as if he'd heard of this place somewhere. He finally stopped in front of a tall house that looked like it was being hauled upwards by a towering huge tree. With this bemused mindset, the thickly leafed branches of 5 to 6 very tall trees were intertwined with the entwined branches supporting a large house in midair. The plants were growing exceptionally well around it, and there were also some bizarre flowers bearing some strange and exotic fruit. Looking around the surroundings and blinking for quite a bit, Han Shao's heart shook and he suddenly cried out in astonishment, "A place of extreme wood! Ha ha, this is actually a place of extreme wood! No wonder all the plants have developed so perfectly." So this is the case. A naturally formed place of extreme wood. The presence of the element of wood within it was much more dense than in other places. All the plants and trees that grew in a place of extreme wood were naturally much more luxuriant than in other places. Although the forest trolls worshipped the demon of raiding Dadra, it was said in legends that they were a race evolved from trees, and so they had a natural affinity for wood. The air here is clearer than anywhere else. Our ancestors searched for many years before discovering this place, and so built the palace of the sacred ground here. The stone statue of Dadra was erected for worship inside. There are tributes offered to the great Dadra every year in hopes that the Great One will ensure our successful raids. The old priest genuflected piously towards the house, hovering in mid-air, and said all this softly. After thinking for a while, the old priest seemed to think that this was inappropriate and immediately started bowing down to the little skeleton. He spoke some gobbledygook to the troll warriors, lifting the little skeleton's carriage. The troll warriors lowered the carriage and indicated for the little skeleton to depart from the carriage. At this moment, Han Shao was thinking of how his wood-elite zombie was already at hand and was incredibly excited. He'd actually forgotten to continue giving orders to the little skeleton. The old priest made a number of sincere requests and discovered that the little skeleton was still sitting motionless within the carriage. His brow tightly knit together, he sank to his knees in front of Han Shao. "Liaison, why doesn't the great Datter descend from the carriage? Have we done something wrong?" The old priest's words immediately startled Han Shao from his daydream. He turned his head and discovered that the little skeleton was lying there lazily as if he'd fallen asleep. Han Shao gave an order and the little skeleton's legs straightened, standing up abruptly, and looked around with his shiny skull the bone dagger in his hand. "Dattera was contemplating just now and didn't hear your calls. Can we go up now?" Han Shao snickered inwardly but spoke seriously to the old priest. Timidly nodding his head, the old priest didn't dare to ask anything else. He walked to the back of one of the towering trees and started climbing up after pulling down a soft ladder woven from tree branches. Han Shao followed behind the old priest and climbed up, also making use of the soft ladder. The little skeleton walked out from within the carriage and moved to somewhere in the distance before Han Shao had a chance to give orders to the little skeleton. What happened next was something out of everyone's expectation, as it made use of the momentum from charging forward, extended both leg bones, and flew into the sky when the 7 bone spurs on its back flapped around randomly. It landed in front of the door to the big house in the sky before Han Shao and the old priest reached it. His body wavering in front of the big house, the little skeleton slowly regained his footing and shook his head. He then pulled open the door and entered the house with Pilipula sounds of items being rifled through sounding out. "Dattera." The old priest wore an expression of excitement as he started calling out in gobbledygook. Finally the old priest and Han Shao had climbed up to the steps in front of the big house. Some other forest trolls were standing guard outside and no one else had been allowed up. Han Shao followed the excited old priest into the house and immediately saw an enormous sculpture of a skeleton in the middle of the room. It was exactly the same as the one that Han Shao had seen on the old priest's ancient scroll earlier, with the only difference being that the enormous skeleton wearing an eye patch wielded a weapon that looked similar to the side that the Grim Reaper carried in its right hand. It grasped a large satchel in its left hand and it bulged as if holding many spoils from raids. It was brightly lit inside with all sorts of colored jewels embedded in the wooden walls. Gold and jewelry could be seen everywhere on the ground. The Han Shao of now wasn't someone who didn't recognize wealth, and he noticed that all the various jewels in the wooden walls were absolutely priceless as they exuded radiant and sparkling glimmers. The cups and cutlery were placed on a jade table and were all made of beautiful jade and gold, dazzling Han Shao's eyes. The little skeleton hefted its bone dagger as it ran a hand over its gleaming skull cap, circling continuously around the enormous stone sculpture erected in the center of the house. He would occasionally touch the featherless wings behind the giant stone skeleton sculpture and would run its hand along its back to touch the 7 bone spurs, seeming to be quite puzzled as to why the great stone sculpture looked so much like him. Except compared to the stone sculpture, the little skeleton was almost half its size. The scene looked quite odd, with a little skeleton standing next to a big skeleton. When Han Shao and the old priest entered, they noticed in confusion that the little skeleton was circling around the statue of Dattera. As Han Shao observed the little skeleton, he suddenly discovered that the little skeleton's movements were quite human-like. This prevented Han Shao from giving any orders to the little skeleton, causing him to be astonished. He looked intently at the little skeleton with a heated gaze, instead intending to see what he was up to. Just as Han Shao was astonished, he saw the little skeleton suddenly stop right in front of the statue of the demon Dattera. His empty sockets stared at the eye patch over Dattera's left eye and then extended a hand to feel his own left eye socket, as if wondering why he didn't have an eye patch. The little skeleton suddenly jumped up and extended a hand to rip off Dattera's eye patch. When the little skeleton landed, it was with an eye patch in hand. There was a purple gem concealed in the left eye socket of the now eye patchless Dattera, as if it was an eyeball. The originally lifeless stone sculpture of the demon Dattera now appeared to have a few traces of life to it, with the addition of a purple eye. It gave Han Shao the misguided feeling that the sculpture was looking at him. At this moment the purple eyeball seemed to rotate once and glow weakly with soft purple light, as if the demon Dattera had revived suddenly. "Oh, the great Dattera has opened the purple demon eye! The great Dattera has manifested!" The old priest displayed jubilation as he went crazy with excitement and buried his head in the ground, hollering loudly. The little skeleton previously standing there dumbly suddenly moved a small table in front of the statue of the demon Datara and leapt onto it. He stood on his tiptoes and reached a hand towards the left eye of the statue of the demon Datara. As Han Shao-Oh's scalp grew numb, the little skeleton firmly gouged the purple demon eye out and lifted it high for a glance before stuffing it into his own left eye socket. Han Shao didn't know what to do here either, but before he'd thought through what should be done, he suddenly felt a spitting pain in his head. He looked at the little skeleton and realized that the little skeleton had somehow firmly stuffed the purple demon eye into his own eye socket. However, when the purple demon eye entered his left eye socket, the little skeleton also appeared to be in pain. His body shuddered and he then clutched his head to roll on the ground in pain. As the host, Han Shao shared a mental connection with the little skeleton and also felt the same racking pain. An enormous foreign energy was emanating from the little skeleton's purple demon eye. Han Shao could clearly feel that the purple demon eye was trying to intrude into his and the little demon's body, as if trying to take control of the two bodies. Great Datara liaison, what's happening to you two? The old forest troll priest lifted his head to see that something was amiss with Han Shao and the little skeleton and immediately cried out an inquiry. Get out, leave first. The great Datara has some things to do. Han Shao roared as he held up beneath the searing pain. The old forest troll priest was startled as he frantically walked out of the house in confusion. He stayed outside to observe what was happening within the sacred ground. Han Shao immediately clutched his head when the old priest left and curled into a ball with the small skeleton. Han Shao's heart was filled with baffled fear. If this purple demon eye really did belong to the demon Datara, then this strange energy invading his body would naturally come from Datara. A demon was a type of deity and their power wasn't something that humans could withstand. This made Han Shao at a loss for what he should do at the moment. This enormous power was spreading out from the purple demon eye within the little skeleton's left eye socket. Han Shao first gave the order to remove the purple demon eye, but the little skeleton had shoved it into his eye in a way that no matter how the little skeleton grappled with the purple demon eye, he was unable to remove it again. As one human and one skeleton rolled around continuously inside and convulsed with pain, another wondrous power emanated from the eye patch that the little skeleton had held onto during all this time. Because his brain was hurting to the extreme, Han Shao's perception grew tremendously and he suddenly detected the abnormality. He grasped at every possible solution in his panic and gave the little skeleton the order to put on the eye patch. It was magical that the mysterious power attempting to take over their bodies suddenly vanished without a trace after the little skeleton frantically put the eye patch on. The profusely sweating Han Shao slowly returned to normal. The eye patch looked quite appropriate on the statue of the demon Datara, but it was noticeably bigger on the little skeleton. The eye patch almost covered the entire left side of his face and he looked a bit comical and funny. Never remove the eye patch no matter when or what. Han Shao recovered himself and ignored all these bizarre happenings, giving the little skeleton this order first. Chapter 102, Looting the tribute to the demon. There seemed to be an evil power of Datara's contained within the purple demon eye. The eye patch also seemed to have the ability to seal that power, making Han Shao feel that it was very strange. His eyes kept looking over at the comical eye patch on the little skeleton's head, attempting to discover something, anything. However, Han Shao quickly realized that his efforts were futile. He could no longer detect anything out of the ordinary from the purple demon eye after it had been covered by the eye patch. Apart from the jewels and beautiful jade scattered throughout the entire house, there was nothing else worth noticing. When Han Shao no longer felt endangered, he rose to summon the old forest troll priest. When the old priest entered, his gaze instantly converged on the statue of Datara, now missing the purple demon eye. He was incredibly astonished and asked what's happened? Why is the purple demon eye that the great Datara left behind gone? Pointing at the little skeleton, Han Shao smiled faintly and explained, the eye has already been reclaimed by the great Datara of this world. Do you not see the eye patch on his left eye? The old priest finally reacted when Han Shao gave this reminder and looked at the little skeleton in astonishment. The old priest immediately fell to his knees and cried out, congratulations to the great Datara. My tribe has always protected the purple demon eye according according to your final wishes, and now that the purple demon eye has returned into your grasp, my tribe has fulfilled what you have entrusted us with. Apart from the purple demon eye, was there anything else you offered as tribute to the great Datra? Han Shao thought and stared at the old priest in question. The old priest was startled and mused thoughtfully with his brow furrowed. He shook his head and said, we watched over the purple demon eye in accordance with the Great One's last wishes. Apart from this, all the treasure has also been offered to the great Datra. Very good, very good. Han Shao nodded his head and said to the old priest, leave for now, the great Datra will emerge to guide you in a moment. The old priest reverently backed out of the great house, and Han Shao started unstintingly looting everything within the house. The gold, jewels and jade scattered across the ground vanished one by one into Han Shao's space ring. Han Shao slightly estimated the wealth within and felt that it was likely worth tens of thousands of gold coins. They were all items that the forest trolls had offered to the demon Datra after stealing from others. Han Shao temporarily ignored the heavier items and also didn't immediately attempt to pry the jewels embedded into the wooden walls out. He first put away the jewels, gold and jade scattered on the floor, and then took inventory of his haul. He felt that it was a good place to stop for now. Apart from a few larger antiques and the jewels embedded into the house, many of the valuable jewels, gold and jade had made their way into Han Shao's space ring. However, the capacity within Han Shao's space ring was limited, and there were some other items stored within as well. He'd only taken 1/3 of the items within the house, but the value of this 1/3 was likely tens of thousands of gold coins as well. It looked like the forest trolls had reaped rich rewards after many years of raiding. Since the little skeleton had become the forest troll's great Datra, Han Shao once again started thinking furiously. He would be able to compel the forest trolls to do certain things by taking advantage of the little skeleton's identity. He wasn't worried that the items within the house would magically disappear. They should be quite safe in here. He'd have to come back sooner or later to refine the wood elite zombie, so Han Shao wasn't in a hurry. The forest trolls were a race that was universally hated and disdained within the dark forest. With the presence of the little skeleton now, Han Shao could swagger about and borrowed influence and compel them to action. The only thing he was hesitant about was, what could he do with these forest trolls? Han Shao suddenly felt a huge headache as he thought. These forest trolls were naturally greedy and loved looting from others. This wouldn't be changed no matter what. This made Han Shao not know how to control them. If it wasn't for the fact that they had mistaken the little skeleton for the demon Datra and was worshipping him, Han Shao didn't mind killing them all and taking all their belongings. However, with the little skeleton now, Han Shao could make use of them. It seemed too much of a waste to kill them then. He racked his brains painfully for a bit. Han Shao felt that their innate raiding nature would be unable to be changed. The only thing he could change was who they raided. If the target they raided could shift to the equally infamous goblins or man-eating monsters or the troops of some enemy empires, then a bad thing would become something good. When he thought this point through, Han Shao left the house with the little skeleton. He made use of the surveillance of the 3 originals demons to obtain a full grasp of the place that the forest trolls were guarding. When he descended from the house, Han Shao opened his mouth to give orders. The great Datra has just descended here and is unfamiliar with the current state of this world. The great Datra needs to familiarize himself with the dark forest and then point out the way for your future. Do not continue to raid the dwarves during this process. The great Datra needs them alive and well. Although many questions existed within the heart of the old forest troll priest, he didn't dare question Han Shao's words. He only drooped his head and asked respectfully, do you need us to send out warriors to help the great Datra get to know these surroundings? No need. The great Datra and I will remain within your tribe over the next couple of days. You can just stay here and wait. Han Shao didn't take the forest troll's wooden raft after these words and left with the little skeleton after giving a few more commands. Han Shao didn't immediately return to the cemetery of death after leaving the area, but took the little skeleton with him on a trip to case the area. Since he wanted to collect the 5 divine zombies, Han Shao would naturally not let go of a naturally formed place of extreme wood. Apart from the forest trolls guarding the wooden house and some amazingly exuberant growth of trees and grass nearby, there was nothing else. Han Shao finally felt at ease after releasing the 3 originals demons and having them scout out the area. He planned on returning to the outskirts of the cemetery of death. Han Shao O had closely observed the surroundings through the original demons on his way here, and the way back had long since been imprinted in his heart. He didn't directly head towards the river to return, but walked unhurriedly along the river current. He felt a bit hungry halfway through his trip and looked at the strange fish joyously swimming around in the clear waters. A thought struck him, and the demon slayer edge flew out with a whoosh. It sank into the water according to Hansha-O's intentions and returned to Hansha-O's hands after piercing through two large fish. The little skeleton left with bone dagger in hand under Hansha-O's orders and came back with a bunch of wooden materials after a while. He agilely constructed a rack, whereas Hansha-O lit the fire and set the two big fish on the rack. He then took out spices from his space ring and sprinkled it over the baking fish. A tempting smell slowly began to spread out. A black shadow dashed in from the far skies. When a great gust of wind flapped Hansha-O's clothes, a pungent and disgusting stink attacked his nose, making disgust well up within Hansha-O. When he raised his head and looked up angrily, the black shadow had risen from low to high and returned high up in the sky, forming a black dot. "Damned ugly bird, so disgusting!" Hansha-O cursed and turned the almost ready fish onto the other side. Just at this moment the black shadow swept down from the distance with a whistling sound, rising back up into the air when it was not too far from the top of Hansha-O's head. But Hansha-O had been prepared and saw the black shadow clearly this time. It had the body of an eagle but the face of an exceedingly ugly woman, a harpy. Harpies and deep-water venom pythons were all level 3 magical creatures. She had the face of a human but couldn't make human sounds. A disgusting scent could always be found on her, since she liked to scavenge the corpses of humans. When one caught the eye of a harpy, she would continuously test them until she found the right opportunity to suddenly dive at your scalp and use the disgusting scent on her body to disorient you, then use her sharp claws to rip your head apart and start eating. Within the dark forest it would be very tricky when one caught the eye of a harpy because of her agile flight speed. When Hansha-O discovered that he had caught the attention of this harpy, he used piercingly cold eyes to look at the harpy circling overhead and snorted lightly, looking for death. Maintaining his position of baking fish, Hansha-O ignored the continuous feints from the harpy overhead. The little skeleton wielding the bone dagger was a bit restless at his side, seemingly to want to bring this annoying harpy down, but temporarily took no action beneath Hansha-O's soothing. At this moment several people slowly emerged in the distance. They looked like they belonged to a young adventurer's crew. They had mages, archers and warriors numbering 6 in total. They looked at the circling harpy and cursed lowly at the irritating harpy. Hansha-O had been staring intently at the harpy and planning on taking care of her when he finally realized that the harpy's original target seemed to have been them when he heard their curses. She suddenly switched targets when she saw him here alone and attempted to eat him first. One of the swordsmen had discovered Hansha-O via the delicious smell of the baking fish. He pointed out Hansha-O to his companions, and the band of 6 young adventurers with males and females started heading his way. Chapter 103, The Fruit of Dagmar. "Hello friend, are you adventuring alone in the dark forest?" the swordsman called out softly when he was quite a distance away from Hansha-O. Hansha-O had long since discovered these 6 and had summoned the little skeleton again, since he didn't want to reveal his status as a necromancer. He lifted his head when he heard the other's voice and nodded at the swordsman. "That's right." The cross-legged harpy whooshed past overhead but didn't dare to continue testing Hansha-O's patience when she saw the 6 adventurers meet up with him. She flew to a higher vantage point to observe the happenings from the sky. The 6 adventurers were a team of 3 warriors, 2 mages and 1 archer. The archer was a female elf, and the 3 male warriors consisted of 1 senior swordswoman and 2 journeyman swordsmen. In addition to them there was 1 male journeyman mage and 1 female adept mage. After Hansha-O had participated in the test given by the academy, he now knew of some of the level differentiations and symbols used by the Magic Association and the Knight Association. Mages would have an exquisite small magic staff embroidered on the shoulder of their mage robes according to strength. Novice mages would possess the image of a magic staff, and each successive level would add another magic staff. Swordsmen and knights had similar ways of differentiation, with swordsmen using swords as their emblems and knights using battle steeds. The robes of the mages and swordsmen looked like they'd been verified by the Magic Association and the Knight Association, and thus, Emblems representing their strengths were attached to the clothes they were wearing. Han Shao could easily determine their strength with just a glance. The 6 of them weren't weak, but a bit too weak if they were to venture into the depths of the dark forest. This was why the harpy dared to follow them when she discovered these 6. If any of them were an archmage that could fly, then the harpy would have run as far as possible and wouldn't dare to look for chances to attack them. I'm called Odysseus. These are my companions. I think you've noticed the harpy's disturbance earlier. I'm very sorry to say that the harpy has been targeting us and shifted her attentions to you when she discovered that you were walking alone. As a level 3 magical creature, it was truly difficult to fight a harpy since she can fly in the air. If you don't mind, you can walk with us. The harpy shouldn't dare come down and cause trouble if the 7 of us are together. The senior swordsman Odysseus spoke sincerely to Han Shao. Shaking his head, Han Shao declined with a smile. That's all right. I think you want to head further into the dark forest, but I'd like to go back to the outskirts. We're not taking the same path, so I won't trouble you. How can this be? If you continue to walk alone, the harpy will never give up on you. I think you should stay with us or you'll be in greater trouble or even die. One of the female adept mages, Aphrodite, said softly. The others also protested when they heard Aphrodite's words, but Han Shao didn't agree to leave with them. Although the 6 weren't that weak, only the archer's arrows had any ability to cause trouble for the harpy. Once the flight-capable harpy dashed up in the air, the swordsman would pose no threat to her whatsoever, and magic may not be effective because of the distance. However, Han Shao was armed with a demon slayer edge and the crossbow. Add to that the fact that the little skeleton could also fly up into the air using his bone spurs. If the harpy was so oblivious as to dare attack him, then painful wallops from Han Shao and the little skeleton would be awaiting her. Therefore Han Shao wasn't that afraid of the harpy. This was why he turned down the invitation from the 6 adventurers and chosen to set off alone. Hey, thank you for your concern, but I don't think it'd be that easy for the harpy to catch me. Han Shao responded with a smile and grabbed his 2 baked fish. He didn't respond to the 6 young adventurers again and walked back in the direction they had come from alone. The 6 young adventurers were startled when they saw Han Shao leave leisurely. The senior swordsman Odysseus opened his mouth to say, let's observe in the distance. If he truly has a method to deal with the harpy, then we'll decide to leave. Otherwise we'll help him to prevent him from being eaten. Captain, that person's already turned us down. Do we have to do this? Journeyman swordsman Gordon was rather unwilling as he spoke sullenly. The harpy's original target was us and only troubled others because we started heading in this direction. I think we should own up to this responsibility. Odysseus lectured Gordon and directed the others to follow him, trailing far behind Han Shao. After walking roughly 5 minutes, the harpy circling over Han Shao finally made another move. She dived down from high up in the sky and once again soared back up into the clouds with a screeching whistle when she'd almost landed on his head, baiting Han Shao with extreme patience. However, Han Shao was even more patient than her. Although his 2 hands looked empty, the demon slayer edge was ready to erupt into the air at any time, and his crossbow was already prepared to fire within his space ring. As soon as the harpy dared enter within range, Han Shao wouldn't mind killing this level 3 magical creature with one shot. As for the 6 adventurers following at a distance, Han Shao could see everything clearly. He didn't pay much attention to their kind-heartedness and continued walking towards the cemetery of death at a leisurely pace. The harpy finally couldn't contain herself after repeatedly testing him and once again swooped in directly toward Han Shao with her sharp claws curved, quickly approaching Han Shao's skull cap. A disgusting stench assaulted his nostrils and immediately wafted around Han Shao's being. Most people would be temporarily dizzy and disoriented after catching the whiff of this stench, but Han Shao's body had been trained to an unknown level of indomitability and wasn't affected by this at all. He still fakely swayed in accordance with the harpy's intentions, as if he would crash to the ground at any given moment. Oh no, he's been disoriented by the stench of the harpy's body. He's in danger. We should go save him. The adept mage Aphrodite suddenly called out as the 6 adventurers no longer concerned themselves with concealment and walked out from the shrubbery behind him. The archer frantically shot arrows towards the harpy. At this moment, the harpy, who'd been afraid to commit herself to a full descent, finally seemed to think that the timing was finally right. She'd maintained a distance of 7 or 8 meters from the ground when she suddenly shot like lightning down toward Han Shao. A pair of iron claws locked onto Han Shao's head, seeming to want to rip Han Shao Sha-O's bones apart. A cold smile blossoming from the corners of his mouth. Honshu's body swayed even more and stiffened right before the harpy's iron claws landed on his head. He quickly fell straight backwards so that the claws that had been reaching for Honshu-O's head landed on empty air. Just as the harpy called out strangely and was going to try to make another move, the demon slayer edge interspersed with red light suddenly slashed through the air and brought with it a fierce flaming surge of strength that flooded into the harpy's body. A desolate low call sounded as the harpy flapped her wings, wobbling in a hurried attempt to leave the ground. The crossbow was already grasped in Honshu-O's hand at this moment and shot out ruthlessly after locking onto the harpy's thin neck. Red light flaring out from her body, the harpy cried out in continuous pain. She was absolutely unable to stabilize her body at this time and naturally didn't notice an even more lethal attack nearing. The crossbow bolt strongly pierced her neck and sent her body flying backwards. Her neck maintained the position of looking back up at the sky as she suddenly fell onto the ground. Oh my gosh, he shot down the harpy. Swordsman Andrew arrived swiftly after closing the distance and suddenly discovered that the harpy's body had fallen to the ground. He exclaimed in surprise and found it hard to believe the sight. The other adventurers who had planned on reciting incantations or shooting down the harpy also stilled the movements of their hands and looked at the harpy fluttering weakly in the distance, their faces also filled with astonishment. Under Honshu-O's thoughts, the demon slayer edge had used the magical flames of the mystical glacial spellfire after plunging into the harpy's body to incinerate her internal organs. No smoke appeared, but the harpy's body quickly turned into a charred mess and the thick scent traveled even further. Standing up and patting off the dust on his body, Honshu-O walked over to the thoroughly fried harpy, held his breath and took out the demon slayer edge. Excavating the core of a level 3 magical creature from her body, he then chopped off her 2 iron claws and stored them within his space ring. A level 3 magical creature wasn't actually that easy to deal with, otherwise the 6 adventurers wouldn't have had such a headache. The harpy has always relied on the overwhelming stench within her body and her position from high up in the air to be successful in every endeavor. It was a pity that her 2 advantages were completely ineffective against Honshu-O, and she finally became a target for Honshu-O to take advantage of. Add to that the unparalleled sharpness of the demon slayer edge and the fact that it could strike at will in accordance with Honshu-O's wishes. That was what caused her to die so quickly and terribly. Hi friend, you're quite strong indeed. It looks like our concerns were indeed extraneous. Odysseus had finally made it to Honshu-O from the distance and faced the latter merrily. Although these people hadn't been of any help, Honshu-O had gained an understanding of their conversation and methods through the original's demons. He felt that these people were quite decent, and now that their captain Odysseus spoke thus, Honshu-O nodded with a faint smile. I was only lucky my real strength isn't even close to your level. Hey, you're too humble. Odysseus obviously didn't believe Honshu-O's words as he responded politely. Captain, since he's not in danger, I think we should continue deeper into the southern parts of the dark forest to continue searching for the fruit of Dagmar. Gordon walked over from the distance and rushed towards Odysseus. I wonder if the fruit of Dagmar that we're searching for really exists. A fruit that looks like a human brain? I've never heard of something like this. Adept Mage Aphrodite sighed. Honshu-O had been about to take his leave when he heard Aphrodite's words and didn't leave immediately. He rather looked at Aphrodite in confusion and asked, what kind of item is this fruit of Dagmar? Why is it shaped like a human's brain? This is really a bit incredible. Can you tell me about it? I've heard everything about the fruit of Dagmar from our captain Odysseus. He knows more about it. Aphrodite smiled in a friendly fashion at Honshu-O and pointed at Odysseus. Odysseus smiled faintly. Are you also interested in the fruit of Dagmar? Hey, the legends say that Dagmar was a demon who enjoyed eating human brains. It's possible for a very strange fruit to be produced in the place where he's buried. The fruit is the size of a fist and has dark brown veins running over it. It looks very similar to a human brain. It's said that the fruit of Dagmar has magical properties. Ordinary people will become confused and turn insane if they eat it, but it's said that if the fruit of Dagmar is crushed by a pharmacist it can be made into very precious medicine. I've recently received a request from someone and have decided to try my luck within the dark forest to see if I could find the fruit of Dagmar. Han Shao was suddenly bizarrely gleeful after he heard Odysseus' words. In Chu Kanglen's memories there was a fruit called divine brain fruit. It had the effect of forcefully expanding the human brain. It could turn an ordinary person into a madman, but if a demon practitioner in the molded spirit stage like Han Shao partook of this divine brain fruit, then he could leverage the effects to greatly increase his level of training. Han Shao hadn't contemplated in this direction to begin with because he'd thought that it was impossible for the divine brain fruit to exist within this world, but Odysseus' description of the fruit of Dagmar were the exact same shape of the divine brain fruit. He was unable to resist the temptation of gaining a fruit that could greatly improve his current level of training. Han Shao thought no more of it as he asked directly after Odysseus finished explaining, "If you don't mind, I'd like to go search for this fruit of Dagmar with you." Odysseus and the 6 adventurers suddenly looked at each other after Han Shao spoke. They all felt extremely surprised as they wouldn't have thought Han Shao would have such a proposal. Chapter 104, Forming a team for an adventure. We're actually not holding out too much hope on finding the fruit of Dagmar and are just trying our luck in the depths of the southern parts of the dark forest. We only know that someone has once seen this fruit somewhere, but we're uncertain if that was the fruit of Dagmar or if it's been taken by others already. Have you really decided to join us on this expedition to search for the unknown? Odysseus looked at Han Shao and explained seriously before asking him. Han Shao knew that this group of people didn't have much surety after hearing Odysseus' words, but he thought about it and felt that he didn't seem to have much to do temporarily and would just be returning to the cemetery of death to engage in endless rounds of training to improve himself. If he was lucky enough to obtain the divine brain fruit, then Han Shao's molded spirit realm would be greatly enhanced. Increasing his realm meant that this would also benefit Han Shao's mental strength. Therefore Han Shao gravely considered and felt that the risk was worth taking with them. Nodding, Han Shao looked at Odysseus and said firmly, "Yes, I would like to go with you into the depths of the southern part of the dark forest, but if we are truly able to discover the fruit of Dagmar, I wish to receive one as well. Since you insist, we're very happy to have you join us. I'm just trying my luck for the fruit of Dagmar, so don't have high hopes. Our main goal is to venture into the dark forest because it's said that there's even more tempting items hidden in its depths. Hey, if we do discover the fruit of Dagmar, we only need one to fulfill our mission. You can take the rest, no problem." Odysseus smiled. The further one delved into the dark forest, the greater the danger became. The real danger would only be slowly revealed. There were even stronger magical creatures within some mystical races and all sorts of lethal plant species. But various alluring riches and fortune could also be found amidst the danger. Some exotic plants would grow only in the deeper parts and many would fetch high prices. There were also many things that could be sold from the bodies of level 1, 2 and 3 magical creatures, but the caveat was that you had to kill them first. The two sides reached an agreement and didn't continue tarrying. Odysseus introduced Han Shao to his other companions and the group of 7 set off deeper into the area. The sacred ground that the forest trolls were protecting was not too far up ahead. The forest troll warriors were standing guard over the area. Although there was still some riches within the sacred grounds, Han Shao already viewed it as his personal property. So under Han Shao's purposeful guidance, the band of people avoided the area and continued forward after making a small detour. They didn't run into much danger after walking for a day, and everyone made camp on the banks of a river when it was nightfall. They shoveled out some of the luxuriant growth of shrubbery in the surroundings, and Aphrodite took out some tents from the space ring that she wore on her hand similar to Han Shao's. Everyone set up their tents, made a bonfire and started cooking food. There were fat fish swimming about in the clear river waters on the side. As a water adept, mage Aphrodite cast a minor water magic and caught roughly 10 fish. Everyone used their self-made wooden forks to spear the fat fish and start baking them. After everyone had eaten the fully cooked fish and talked for a short while around the bonfire, everyone headed into their own tents to sleep. The female elven archer and the water adept mage Aphrodite slept in one tent while the 4 males slept 2 to a tent. Han Shao eagerly volunteered to take the watch and found found an isolated place to train his magical on when everyone had entered the tents and settled down. With 3 originals demons by his side, Han Shao didn't need to pay much attention at all, but training his magical on was the foundation for Han Shao's future development, therefore he couldn't slack off for a single second. He held up beneath the onslaught of sudden pain and pleasure in his mind and silently sank into his training. It wasn't until the second half of the night when a sudden strange sound startled Han Shao out of his training. He raised his hand to wipe the sweat away from his brow as everything his 3 original demons was observing fell into his vision. One of the original demons left its post and flew out towards the source of the sound, quickly approaching the origin in the night. A twin-headed dragon was staggering in from the distance. Fresh green blood was flowing from one of its necks and it seemed to have suffered from heavy injuries. It flew swiftly, heedless of direction, towards their location. Although a twin-headed dragon wasn't really a true dragon, it was still a strong level 2 magical beast. Han Shao didn't know why it was so bedraggled and had fallen to the straits of fleeing for its life. One of the original demons kept an eye on the twin-headed dragon's movement. Another split off and sped back in the direction that the twin-headed dragon had come from, attempting to see what was out there that had made the twin-headed dragon run off injured. It was a pity that Han Shao didn't discover anything after the original demon had flown a certain distance. Upon seeing the disoriented twin-headed dragon was headed in their direction, Han Shao immediately stood up and swiftly sped towards the people's tents, shaking their tent poles and calling out loudly, "Wake up, something's happening." Deeply asleep, the adventurers all groggily heard Han Shao's shouts and swiftly put on their clothes, walking out of the tents within 10 seconds. It was about to enter wintertime and the temperature at night was exceedingly cold. The 6 adventurers were solidly wrapped up with only their faces peeking out. Because Han Shao's surveillance had been conducted through the original demons, the 6 people still couldn't detect anything out of the ordinary, even though the twin-headed dragon was speedily approaching. Odysseus looked in confusion at the surroundings and then back at Han Shao. "Everything seems very orderly. Where's the situation?" "A twin-headed dragon is 500 meters north of our position and is quickly approaching. I believe he'll be of danger to us and we need to prepare immediately." Han Shao didn't have time to explain much to them and immediately voiced the truth. Gordon didn't seem to believe Han Shao's words and was about to open his mouth in doubt when Odysseus suddenly said in a low voice, "If this is the case, we'll make preparations immediately." A twin-headed dragon's temper is violent and is not kindly disposed towards humans. "I think it will bring trouble to us if it discovers our presence." The female archer took out 2 arrows and said with some concern, "A twin-headed dragon is a level 2 magical creature. Not only can it spray poison, but the 2 heads can attack directly with sharp teeth. It will be a difficult fight for us." Han Shao took out his crossbow and climbed onto a nearby big tree, saying rapidly, "Don't worry, this twin-headed dragon has already been injured. It can't even fly now. If we prepare accordingly, it won't be able to escape at all." The band of people looked at each other in the eye after Han Shao had spoken and all displayed expressions of surprise. If the twin-headed dragon hadn't been injured, it would have been difficult for the team of adventurers to fight against, but if it couldn't even fly after being injured, this meant that the twin-headed dragon was injured quite heavily. This was a heaven-sent opportunity that they wouldn't let slip away. Full of overjoyed surprise, some of them climbed up into tall trees like Han Shao, while some others hid in the shadows of the trees. They all took out their weapons or concentrated their mental strength to ready themselves to handle the twin-headed dragon with a horrible sense of direction. A rustling sound came from the shrubs that it swept past, and the injured twin-headed dragon finally appeared in everyone's vision amidst great expectation. Gordon, who had been doubtful of Han Shao's judgment earlier, flashed him an admiring glance in the distance and gripped his longsword with excitement, intending on hitting the twin-headed dragon with a swift attack. The twin-headed dragon, with a bad sense of direction, finally slammed headfirst into the wall of water that Aphrodite had set up. The enormous impact caused Aphrodite's wall of water to turn into numerous droplets in the air. At the same time, Han Shao and Nia, the female elven archer, attacked at almost the same time. Han Sha-o couldn't fire the crossbow in quick succession, so the bolt he shot out landed on the back of the twin-headed dragon's neck. Nia sent out 3 arrows, and apart from it dodging the first arrow, the other 2 were all nailed to its forehead. The Thunder Journeyman mage within the group shot out a ring of lightning to attack the twin-headed dragon's back. The 3 warriors who'd lain in wait for a while took advantage of this opportunity to rush out and dash towards the twin-headed dragon, releasing their fighting aura to attack ferociously. Up in front, Aphrodite created another 2 beings of water to attract the twin-headed dragon's attention and create more opportunities for Han Sha-o and the archer Nia to attack. In this way, the level 2 magical creature, the twin-headed dragon, didn't even have time to spray out poison under the heavy barrage. He'd already been injured and finally fell down listlessly in its blood. The adventurers were incredibly excited when they saw that they'd killed the twin-headed dragon and walked out cheering from their places of concealment, preparing to strip the trophies from twin-headed dragon's body. Han Sha-o's face suddenly twisted drastically at this moment, and he suddenly yelled fiercely, "Hurry up and leave this place. The person who had been pursuing the twin-headed dragon is heading this way, and we have no chance of winning a fight against them." Chapter 105. Not listening to advice, the 6 people had been ready to enjoy the fruits of victory when they were immediately startled by Han Sha-o's violent yell. They all immediately reacted and sensibly gave up looting the trophies from the twin-headed dragon's body. Their questioning gazes all swiftly locked onto Han Sha-o. After Han Sha-o had repeatedly demonstrated his superb perception and corresponding strength, all of them now treated Han Sha-o as the new leader at some unbeknownst time. Even Odysseus didn't possess any dissatisfaction and seemed to acknowledge that all this was a matter of course. There could only be one leader within a team. Apart from possessing strength that compelled others to place their trust in him, he would need to maintain a calm mind and sensitive decision-making abilities. Follow me. When Han Sha-o discovered that he had become the target of their acceptance, he didn't waste any time with empty blather or humility and opened his mouth to make this statement. Han Sha-o swiftly passed through the area with a turn of his body and shot to the left. None of the 6 young adventurers called his decision into question and immediately dropped everything they were holding, ignored the exposed tents and the body of the twin-headed dragon on the ground, which was still warm, and darted out after Han Sha-o. A patch of enormous towering trees suddenly appeared within everyone's vision. The towering trees here had thick foliage covering the bright moonlight. The branches of these enormous trees were like the tentacles of a strange creature in the dark of the night and were a bit frightening. When they reached this place, Han Sha-o stared at one of the large trees and used the entangled branches to climb up. His body suddenly disappeared halfway up the tree. Of the 6, the 3 swordsmen were quite agile and were only 10 seconds behind Han Sha-o. The 2 mages and the archer also climbed onto the branches with the assistance of the others. The group suddenly discovered that there was an opening halfway up the large tree. This big tree that looked beyond solid and strong was actually hollowed out. The 7 entered through the opening, with 4 of them shifting to the bottom. Han Sha-o, Odysseus and Aphrodite in the back stuck half their heads out and looked into the distance. "What is it?" Everyone finally caught their breaths at this time, and Odysseus immediately looked at him in confusion. "It's a super-level magical creature, the unicorn. This unicorn seems to have been chasing the twin-headed dragon from the beginning. No wonder it fled desperately." Han Sha-o frowned as he explained to Odysseus. The unicorn was as swift as lightning, and its body had the marvelous property of being resistant to magic. The horn on its forehead encompassed an even more wondrous power. It was the antidote to 100 poisons, the cure that could bring others back from the dead as well as purify dirty places. According to the legends, the unicorns would only come near pure young girls and hated human males. Normally, unicorns wouldn't do anything inappropriate if they weren't infuriated. However, Han Sha-o could feel the wrath of this unicorn through his original demons, as if the twin-headed dragon had done something to make it lose all reason. The super-level magical creature had an extremely durable body and was resistant to magic. Magical and physical attacks wouldn't have much effect on it, particularly because the strength of Han Sha-o's group wasn't advanced enough, which makes it extremely difficult for them to harm the unicorn. It was said that the unicorns had received the blessings of the gods. If anyone ever harmed or killed a unicorn, then this person would be cursed and have repeated bad luck. Therefore, despite a unicorn possessing a body full of treasures, very few people would throw caution to the wind and pursue a unicorn. Odysseus and Aphrodite both inhaled sharply when they realized the creature that had been pursuing the twin-headed dragon was a furious super-level unicorn. They all counted themselves lucky to have escaped in time, otherwise they might have suffered painful consequences from the unicorn's anger. As Odysseus and Aphrodite were rejoicing, a snow-white unicorn with a horn on its head and a pair of beautiful blue eyes trotted out with elegant hoof steps to the side of the twin-headed dragon's body. Han Shao and the others a distance away within the hole in the tree immediately concealed their presence. Add to that the fact that they were a bit of a distance away, they weren't afraid that they'd be immediately discovered by the unicorn. The unicorn had been a bit agitated to begin with, but suddenly stilled upon seeing the dead body of the twin-headed dragon when it arrived. It circled the body with light graceful steps and even extended a snow-white hoof to kick the body. When it discovered that the twin-headed dragon really didn't exhibit any movement, it stood stock still and craned its pure white neck around. A very human-like confusion was displayed in its blue eyes. The unicorn hadn't discovered anything after looking around like this. It then shook its head and shook itself all over, returning back to where it came from. The unicorn wasn't a carnivore, so the body of the twin-headed dragon held no attraction for it. No matter what the twin-headed dragon had done to infuriate it, it was now dead, and thus, the unicorn was satisfied. One of the original demons closely followed the unicorn until it picked up speed and vanished without a trace. Han Shao then had the original demon withdraw and said to the others, "The unicorn has left. We can dig out the magical core of the twin-headed dragon now." The others were full of confidence and acceptance toward Han Shao's decisions and leadership abilities by now. Even Gordon, who hadn't fully trusted Han Shao in the beginning, now looked at Han Shao with a gaze full of sincere admiration. Everyone cheered happily after Han Shao spoke these words and slowly crawled out from the hole within the tree, planning to collect the spoils of war from the twin-headed dragon. A strange sound suddenly arrived in their ears as a manticore bearing a silver-haired youth with an inflexible will suddenly appeared next to the twin-headed dragon. There was a paralyzing venom within every manticore's tail, and its claws were ferocious when tearing into flesh. Add to that its agile movements and powerful jumps, it was a level 1 beast, trickier than the twin-headed dragon to handle. The manticore was a very headache-inducing existence within the dark forest. Who would have thought that such a magical beast would be tamed by others? The owner of Manticore was a 27 or 8-year-old youth. He was dressed carelessly, wore a space ring on his left hand, and carried a broadsword in his right hand. The lines of his face were resolute and angular. Although he wasn't a stunning man, he had his own allure. "Oh, looks like I'm quite lucky today to meet a twin-headed dragon that had just died," the youth murmured lowly to himself and urged the Manticore to stop in front of the twin-headed dragon. It seemed like he intended to reap the spoils of Han Shao and the others. At this moment Han Shao was a few steps ahead of Odysseus and the others and had jumped down from the hole within the tree. When he saw the youth was matter-of-factly viewing the twin-headed dragon as his prey, he was immediately ticked off. Han Shao chuckled coldly in the distance and said, "Friend, we killed this twin-headed dragon with great effort. It's not the right thing to do collecting the spoils without asking for the owner's permission, right?" The youth lifted his head to look at Han Shao and say contemptuously, "All magical creatures have no owner within the dark forest, whether they are alive or dead. Since I was the one who had discovered the twin-headed dragon, it's mine." The youth ignored Han Shao after saying this and pulled out a dagger from his calf, tending to his own business and attempting to yank at the poisonous fangs from within the twin-headed dragon's head. Han Shao wasn't someone to possess a good temper and pulled out his crossbow to lock onto the other when he saw that the latter was completely ignoring his words. Han Shao smiled coldly. "I'll shoot and kill you where you are if you dare move." "Oh, then I'll move for you to see." The youth looked amusedly at Han Shao and said this remotely. He immediately flicked the dagger and plucked out one of the twin-headed dragon's fangs. Han Shao nodded and didn't say anything else. He planned on immediately shooting out this bolt and kill this stubborn fellow. Just at this moment Odysseus suddenly called out, "No!" Odysseus quickly rushed to Han Shao and explained anxiously he should be the legendary Trunks. This is a demon riding a manticore. Anyone who irritates him will face enormous trouble. If he wants the twin-headed dragon, then he can have it. Han Shao-Oh's expression changed as he looked in surprise at the youth, finally remembering that this person was the magical creature hunter Trunks within the dark forest. The person's origin was mysterious. As a swordsman within the dark forest, this person's temper was eccentric and his personality aloof. It was said that not only did he hunt magical creatures, but he also hunted some of the adventurers within the dark forest as well. He was very adept at doing battle within the dark forest, and apparently even a great swordsmaster had met their death at his hands. He was a universally feared cold-blooded killer within the dark forest. Your friend's suggestion is good, you should listen to him. The youth reached out a hand towards the twin-headed dragon's other poisonous fang and looked at Han Shu from afar, seeming to have concluded that Han Shao wouldn't dare make a move. Except the whistling sound of a crossbow bolt tearing through the air greeted him. Han Shao's expression was cold as he didn't listen to any of Odysseus' words at all. The aimed crossbow in his hand directly fired at Trunks. Trunks was just about to remove the other fang and was quite dumbfounded to see that Han Shao had actually shot his crossbow. His body was already moving when he revealed his surprised expression, and he'd already taken a step backwards like a ghost. PFFT. The force behind a crossbow bolt stuck the bolt deeply into the ground where he'd been standing, leaving behind only half a bolt that continued quivering in the ground. If Trunks hadn't dodged in time, his body would have been pierced through when this bolt landed.